Hello, everyone. I hope we're all doing well. Welcome to Happy Hour here at Village Theater. I am Brandon Ivy. I'm the Associate Artistic Director. And we have been having these little happy hour chats once a week the last couple weeks. We've been bringing you staff members, actors, writers, all kinds of folks that work here at Village Theater to just give you a little insight into the process. This week on the show, we are featuring not only another room in my parents' house, because I'm quarantining with them. We're now in their study office area with, a map and a clock and a random assortment of papers and stuff. And also it's featuring my haircut, because I got my haircut by my mother here at my parents' house. But the person that you've probably come to see is on staff at Village as our casting director. She is also a director and producer in her own right. She's also a dear friend. I'm so happy to have her on the program. Please welcome Jessica Spencer.
Yay!
Yay!
Oh, I brought my happy hour beverage.
Oh, see, I just have water. I'm lame.
I also don't have my kid right now because my husband's amazing and he's doing bedtime. Mama did good. Iris Elton. Sorry, I'm looking at the comments. Maybe I shouldn't do that. Daddy's watching baby, so I'm like, happy hour.
Jessica, where are you quarantining?
In Issaquah, in Klahani, where I'm looking to live.
I actually took a walk with Jessica earlier today, a socially distant walk. We stayed 6 feet apart, but my parents live like a 5-minute
little bike ride
away. So I've actually seen Jessica more than probably anyone else doing this.
The first day you came over, so we live on the third floor of a condo building, and I was like, what? He's like, come outside. And I was like, what? And we had our own little Romeo and Juliet moment.
I'd been like walking or riding my bike to this park that's right across the street from Jessica's condo. And I would go there and work out. And then like the 6th or 7th time, I was like, wait a minute, Jessica's literally like a football field away from me right now. No. So welcome everyone that is viewing. Thanks for being here with us. Just so you know, there is a comment field. I think it's down there. It might be over there. It might be over there. It's not up here. But go ahead and leave us comments if you have anything you want to add to the conversation. But also, if you want to ask any questions of Jessica, or me, I guess, but mostly Jessica, put them there, and we will get to questions at the end of the broadcast. Unless it has something to do with what we're talking about right at that second, we will get to as many as we can. So
I love questions.
Think about what you might want to ask Jessica about her life or her job or Village or anything like that. So to just get started, Jessica, why don't you just give us a little rundown of your life,
my life,
how you ended up at Village as the casting director, and sort of what led you to work in this profession.
I was born a baby. Yeah, I grew up in the Midwest. I've always done theater. I got bitten by the theater bug very early in life. My first role on stage was Officer Bump in Frosty the Snowman. So fancy, but pretty much
I was the owl in Bambi.
Oh, that's so cute. And then also trauma. I've been enjoying Brandon. You should follow Brandon on Instagram because he's doing like a walkthrough of all the Disney movies. And yesterday you watched Bambi, and I was like, I watch everything on mute because I have a toddler, and if she hears something on a screen, like when I sneak away, she has to see the screen. And so you posted something about Bambi, and I was like, I don't want to even see this right now. I feel like it's just all trauma. But anyway,
it was such a weird thing because I haven't seen it since I was a true child, like probably 9 years old.
Yeah.
And all I remember is I've specifically avoided it because I remember it scared me.
It's scary.
And so going back into it, I was like, every time the mom would like tiptoe into the meadow, I was like, is this the moment? I also for some reason, I have like seared into my brain. We're getting so off topic. Seared into my brain, like Bambi mourning over his mother, like standing over his mother's body.
Yeah. Is that in the movie? I don't
Not in the movie at all. Not in the movie at all. We got to the point when, sorry, spoiler alert, Bambi's mom dies. And I was like, oh God, and now he's going to stand over her and cry. And it's not in the movie. I like made it up in my head.
Probably because we all do that internally when that happens in the movie is we just can't past that. We just internally cry.
Anyways, you got theater.
I was born in the Midwest. I've only ever done theater, which is a huge blessing. But I've done pretty much everything in theater. It feels like I went to college for theater. And then afterwards, I got a great job at a touring house down in San Antonio. I moved there for a boy. But I kept the boy, so it's all good.
Like, I hope this is the boy that I know.
It is the boy, the boy that I married. And basically got this great job at a touring house on management staff and arts administration. And I was like, hold up. That's not what I went to school for. I went to school to be an actor. I want to try to be an actor. And I did a lot of directing in school as well. So I decided to leave that job in San Antonio and just plunge in and try to do the acting thing. And the boy I moved to San Antonio with, we decided to hang out together some more. And then we traveled around the country for a bit, doing a lot of different theater gigs as much as we could. And we really wanted to find a place to call home. And so we very much put it out in the universe that we were just looking for a theater home. And the next day I met Karen Lund at an audition in South Bend, Indiana, for Taproot Theater's internship. And we were kind of overqualified at that point. We were out of college. We'd done a tour, and I had lots of directing and management on my resume at that point. And so it was just, we weren't really right for interns. And she looked at us and she was awesome. And she said, I don't have anything for you right now, but all I can do is invite you to move to Seattle because I think there's a lot of great organizations out there that would really love to have you. There's this other theater you should look up called Village Theater. And it seems like you would be right on par for their brand and what they do.
How do you know that this is part of your story?
Yeah, this is it. She literally invited us to move to Seattle.
Wow.
Yeah.
Karen is the current associate artistic director at Taproot and was just named their incoming producing artistic director, which is so exciting. And she directed our production of She Loves Me just recently, which Jessica was the associate director on.
Yeah. And so, we were like, I had done a semester abroad in Australia and I had fallen in love with ferry rides, like boats. I was always like, and we also loved Montana. And so we were trying to be like, where can we live that has ferry rides and mountains? And so we moved to Seattle sight unseen. We rented an apartment on Capitol Hill, right on the corner of Broadway. What is that? Like right there?
Oh yeah. It's right by Julia's, Broadway and
Julia's. Like sight unseen, like walked in and they were like, welcome, here's your keys. And we're like, okay. And like just dove in and have really loved the place since. Worked at Taproot. I've done everything. I've worked in a box office. I've directed. I've done a lot of arts education.
And you were in a couple shows at Village.
My first gig at Village was understudying Fiddler on the Roof. Loved that. And then I was able to gratefully be in Les Mis, which was amazing. Thomas Street. You're so right. Ashley Kuhn, Broadway and Thomas. That's literally where we lived. Which is crazy that we could get an apartment there.
Street is the answer to where this apartment in Seattle was Broadway and Thomas.
Where we live. Les Mis. And then I became like a regular teacher and helped with Institute at Kids Stage. But yeah, Jad Davis had my position when I was hired for those things. And I kind of got to know Jad and reached out to him and just said, hey, if you ever need an assistant on anything, I have all this management and organizational experience and directing experience. I would love to assist you with anything casting wise. And so it was about like one season, I was essentially his assistant and helped him manage front desk of auditions and manage the process and booking everybody. And I did a lot. I convinced him to hire for them to see Ethan Carpenter for Les Mis, and convinced Ethan Carpenter to move here. So you're welcome, Seattle, that gem.
And then you got on staff at Village when? 6 years ago?
Yeah, 5 years ago. 5 years ago, I think. I'm in my 6th year.
Great.
Starting my 6th year.
Amazing.
Yeah. So,
and one of the things that I think is the most interesting about your job, and this is pretty typical of casting directors at regional theaters, but I think at Village it's especially interesting because of the way we produce, where we produce some really big musicals like Mary Poppins and Les Mis and Singing in the Rain and stuff like that, but we have a relatively small theater. And so part of the job that I think a lot of people don't hear about casting directors do is some of the stuff actually before the actual casting and audition process happens. So we'll totally talk about auditions and stuff, but I'd love for you to chat a little bit about some of the other things you do, specifically like the casting stuff before the casting. I think that's an interesting part of our puzzle that you do and do very, very well.
Oh, thanks, Brandon. Yeah, so during season selection, I mean, we get to read a lot of things, and festival selection, we get to read a lot of things. But one of the big parts of my job is doing a lot of research on every show we do to figure out how it's been done in the past and how that can translate to our stage, and also what is needed to do the show. Because in reality, it's like you look at so many Broadway productions and original productions of something and you're like, cast of 36, cast of 32. You go back even further and you're like, there were 42 people in Gypsy when it opened? What? And just the reality is that we don't produce theater like that anymore. And 42 people wouldn't fit on Village Theater stage, very honestly. It'd sound amazing. You wouldn't be able to move. And it's basically trying to figure out, great, how can we translate this story best on our stage? How many bodies do we need to do that? What do each of those humans do in every scene? What does an ensemble track look like? What does every principal track look like? So it's a lot of really nerdy, exciting breaking down of every scene and every character and tracking them through the show. And then also sharing that with costumes and the incoming director to say, like, you on board with this? But really, yeah, it's hard because if you pick a big musical like Hello Dolly, for example, and just pull a number out of the air, it doesn't really work. You have to strategize and plan what all of those humans are going to be doing in every scene. A lot of it's done by the directing team and finessed by them, but in order for us to figure out how we're going to do the show at Village Theater, that's the first part of my job that I do. I love that.
And definitely before directors get involved, we typically choose our shows and then choose creative teams very shortly thereafter. But before we decide the shows, we have to know what resources we have, and then how to like spread that out across the season. And so like, just breaking it down into total logistics, if a show exists on Broadway with 32, but we only have, what is the number we've had the last couple of years, like 70 actors in the whole season?
Yeah, 68 to 72 has been the range the past couple of years.
Like that. That, like, you know, if we did Gypsy one year and did it with the original Broadway cast of 41 or whatever, that's way more than half, probably 2/3 of
the entire budget for the entire year.
So one of the things that is so disappointing that folks weren't able to see is that Jessica did a really amazing job with The Wedding Singer, where the original Broadway cast was 31 or something like that?
Yeah.
Or at least upper 20s, at least like 20.
Yeah, I think it was high 20s.
And you created with the director, with Alan Paul, and Katie Tabb, the choreographer, created this really exciting, funny, like chamber version of the show.
The 16.
16 people.
Yeah.
Like, how do you go and take a show that's supposed to have like almost not twice that many, but almost twice that many,
Mm-hmm.
and how do you figure out, oh well, this track that used to be 4 other people, like how do you go about like thinking about that?
Well, the great thing is I knew Wedding Singer pretty well. I had done it in that period between San Antonio and Seattle, like that I talked about. And so I knew it very well. And I knew that what's fun about the show is seeing great character actors play these zany, kooky, out of the box, silly characters. And that's what I feel like Seattle actors do best is just the zany fun. We have awesome character actors in Seattle. And so the more I thought about it, the more I was like, you could really have a world where we just keep those actors so busy. And the joy is seeing Richard Peacock play one role in one scene and a completely different role in the other scene. And what does that look like? And I think it was just kind of silliness in my brain of what if, and I literally wrote it down on like a scrap piece of paper at the end of a production meeting one day. And I was like, I think it would look like this. Mostly because, so there are impersonators at the end, and I basically built it off of the end of the show.
Like celebrity impersonators.
Celebrity impersonators. And I was like, what if these celebrity impersonators play these other tracks? Let's go ahead and say 4 women, 4 men in the ensemble, and the rest are principals, and they just basically move around in insanity around them. See if the director's up for that, and here we go. And
those impersonators are really specific. They're what, Mr. T, Imelda Marcos, Cyndi Lauper,
Billy Idol, Nancy Reagan and Ronald Reagan. It's just hilarious, madcap, funny.
Well, so I think that's one of the coolest things that you do and do so well and so creatively in a way that I think that I don't think anyone that sees shows at Village necessarily goes like, that's not how the show's done. Like you don't even notice because it's done in with such care. And then it's also, the show is cast really well. We have a question that I think is really actually interesting from Christine. I know you have tight budgets. Why do you not offer unpaid positions for extras? And I think, you can speak to this, Jess, but I think for me, it's a pretty simple explanation of we're a professional theater company. And part of being a professional theater company is paying a living wage to the folks that are the professionals that are on stage with us.
Yeah. And I think I always want to give it to our actors in Seattle that they give so much of themselves and they work so hard year round for one opportunity that has to be rewarded in the sense of payment. And it's their value. And I also think that having unpaid positions can kind of get out of control sometimes. And you want to make sure that you're honoring the work that's being done on stage. It's also, actors go to school, the training involved, the cost. It is truly an investment and an insane investment to become an actor, singer, dancer. And that level of expertise needs to be paid for.
Yeah. So once you get into here's a friend, Stephanie says, when I see a show at Village, I hope it's done differently than other productions. Something we really pride ourselves on at Village, because all of our shows are made from scratch. We don't do like out of the box shows. We don't like recreate. There's a lot of times, like I've been an associate director on a few Broadway shows, and there's a circle of people that are associate directors and associate choreographers on like big, splashy original Broadway shows, and then we'll go around the country and then just recreate all of that staging and choreography everywhere. They'll rent the set, they'll rent the costumes, and so you're not. It's not unique to what you're seeing. And one of the things that I think is so refreshing about Village is that there is some freshness to everything because we're approaching it anew.
Yeah, actually, so to add on to that with casting, there is, I would say like if somebody has played a role before once or twice, I would call them a little bit of like a ringer, right? That's like, they know the material, it's in their body. And one thing I learned from Mr. Tompkins, Steve Tompkins, our
Former artistic director.
former artistic director, is, he was very passionate that he's interested and up for working for ringers because they just bring a deep well of knowledge to any show. But he always wanted to have a conversation with them to say, hey, look, I'm not into creating what has been done before. I want to create something new. And you're welcome. I want you to bring your knowledge and your backstory and your history with this role, but I want you to approach it afresh and anew. Are you down for that? And I loved that he had that conversation with anybody who had done the role previously, really. I think it sets a great expectation for, we're going to do something. It's going to be, the level of expertise is going to be awesome, but it's going to be new. It's going to be fresh, and it's going to be Village Theater.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And there's also something to be said about Village. 95% of Village's artists are local Northwest Seattle area artists. And it's also one of the places that local designers work a lot in Seattle. And if we're renting sets and costumes from other productions, it's just taking more work away from local artisans. There'll be times when we'll like rent a costume package, but that's if there's something super special about the show or complicated. But then we always supplement with our own stock and make things from scratch. And it's a bit of a mix, but it's definitely Village Theater, original, unique, made in the Northwest, which we're all very pleased about.
Yeah.
So why don't you talk a little bit? Here's a couple. Okay. You're all giving such great comments, so I'm going to share some of them. I love that you cast so many local people, us too. Hooray for artists and designers.
I love them.
I love these couple about internships and unpaid positions. Just like how refreshing. There's, it's easy to, and we do have internships sometimes, but they're very specific and they're very connected to some kind of educational program. But the idea of like unpaid acting, supplementing and making it possible to do a show is something that we're not particularly interested in.
Yeah.
So why don't you talk a little bit about just like the casting process at Village? Like for those, I'm sure there's a mix of
you see a lot of artists
that are looking, and probably I've already seen a couple questions for some like actor advice. But there's probably also people that just see shows and are not involved in it. So why don't you give us just a little bit of breakdown of how a super fast rundown of like how the casting process works?
Yeah, so I start my year after season planning. So we know the shows, we know the cast sizes. I start my year with what we call open call auditions, which is come one, come all, come audition for the theater. Anybody can sign up. And throughout the year, I also sometimes, if we have a specialty show, we'll have specialty auditions. If you're like an artist, who's a musician and an actor, sometimes I'll have a special call for that if that's needed. But we basically have big old open calls. And I try to attend as many general auditions and open audition opportunities. There's an awesome organization called Theater Puget Sound in this region that hosts a unified audition every year. And I try to attend those as much as possible. And if I'm not able to, I send somebody in my stead. But basically, we're just looking for who we think will be a good fit for each of the shows. And then once that process is done, I go ahead and start a callback process per show. Which was so sad because we had like our Dolly auditions scheduled and then we had to cancel them because of quarantine. So obviously this is shifting it up a bit. But then basically I have per show auditions, and those are callbacks, as I call them, because you have to be invited to participate in order to be seen. We often, as Village Theater, see a lot of humans for these shows. My Mamma Mia and Hello Dolly lists were both over 100 people. And a big part of that...
That's kind of uncommon for a lot of theaters to have as big a call as we do.
Yeah. And a lot of that is truly, I am a big believer on 90 seconds lets me know what you can do, but it doesn't let me know who you are, right? Like it lets me in the door, but I want to see you work. I want to watch you work. I want to watch you take direction. I want to watch you learn a combo. And for every audition you come in, but you don't necessarily book it, I'm still learning about you. And there are so many young artists in Seattle, and there are probably not as many opportunities. And so if I'm not able to see you in a show, the only way I can get to know you is by watching you in like a Mamma Mia audition and then a Haladali audition. And then maybe 2 years later, you finally get cast. But I've started to watch you and take note of you for years based on the opportunity you have within our rehearsal hall.
Yeah, it's that weird long game part of it.
Yeah.
And I've been in plenty of auditions with you specifically where we'll have our first round of callbacks and then go through the list, and there'll be like, yep, this person's not going to go through to the next round, and you'll always say like, yep, not this time, but they're making their way and they're finding and I'm learning more about them, and I think like I bet next time they'll get to that next round.
Yeah,
some kind of like forward thinking with you, which is really refreshing.
Yeah, you have to celebrate the wins of people, even if they don't hear those wins, right? Even if they don't hear the wins, you have to celebrate the wins everybody has in the room, because oftentimes just showing up and putting yourself in a vulnerable spot should be a win and speaks to everybody's character. And I think it's important as like the producing people behind the table for us to take note and acknowledge those things. Right now we're in quarantine and we're in the Mamma Mia process, which is crazy town. And basically
talk about what an audition process in quarantine is like, because that's what we're in the middle of right now. This week we've been having meetings and stuff all about it.
Yeah. So we've asked everybody who was on that callback list to create a self-tape audition, which is basically them alone in a room with their video camera on their computer or their phone, and they're essentially having to perform the material to nobody, which feels weird because we work in a live medium, where we're used to talking one-on-one. Even now I'm like, why can't I see Brandon's eyes really? This is so uncomfortable. And it's hard, you know. The worst part I think about these actors having to put together these self-tapes is you have to watch yourself over and over again and then pick which take you want to send. And it's just so hard.
And it's so interesting. Like they're getting all the material the same or very similar way to if they would have come to an in-person audition, but they're getting a piano track.
Mm-hmm.
Some kind of like, if they have a vocal side, they're getting some kind of like piano backing track, like a karaoke track to sing to. And one of the things that when I started watching the Mamma Mia videos, it, you know, some people have like roommates or they're staying with parents or something right now. But I got to my first audition video
Zoom,
where someone was acting with someone on the phone.
Yeah.
Obviously, they had called someone and put them on speakerphone to do this audition. And it was like, I kind of giggled and went, how clever. And then like the next 5 were all the same. I was like, oh my God, of course. That's going to be the only way.
We provided some tips and tricks and recommendations. And that was one of the things.
Okay, there we go.
Yeah, it was just like, we were like, we will take a poor sound quality of your reader, which for those of you who don't know, if you're reading a side, which is a scene that you do in an audition, you usually have somebody that Village Theater hires to be a reader and read the other person. And when you're doing a self-tape and you're quarantined solo, you don't have another person to read with. So we said we would prefer you FaceTime someone, you Zoom someone. That way you're looking and you're listening and reacting. Because sometimes what people will do is record the lines and then like press a button and it's just a pre-recording. And we really wanted to feel the live nature of the scenes. And everybody did a great job. Honestly, all the video submissions I watched, I was like, I don't know if I could have done this. This is technology and an understanding and a willingness and a vulnerability beyond, I think, what any of us have had to experience. And the thing is, this type of audition process is super common in other hubs like New York or LA. But it's just
anyone that does any kind of TV or film casting.
Yeah. And I think that the difference is just like we're not TV and film, and we're so used to the familiar faces and the feeling of community and knowing that like I see Jessica, I see Brandon, I see, I'm looking at the names here of people coming, Caden and Savannah and John Scott, and like these are people I love and I want them to succeed. And it's so hard when you're alone to be like, they want me to succeed. It just feels very vulnerable. And I think everybody in the entire city have done a stellar job. It's so different.
Yeah. So like what's like obviously Mamma Mia has this weird quarantine aspect to it, and Hello Dolly is also, we're like figuring out how to do that. But as far as like what you're asking people to do, those are pretty traditional shows. Like there's a style of singing they have to do, there's a style of dancing they have to do. They'll probably read some scenes, sing some songs, dance some dances. But like what are some of the more specialty audition processes you've been through? Because I know there's been a couple the last couple years that have
babies.
What?
My babies?
Any of it. I mean, like there's been shows that have like really extreme dance requirements, but then there's also shows that have actor musicians and improv elements. Like what are some of the weird, not weird, but just sort of like less typical?
Well, I love our Pump Boys experience. That was cuckoo brain fun. We just like, Pump Boys was crazy town, right? So
Pump Boys and Dinettes, I feel like it's good to give a little bit of context.
Pump Boys and Dinettes.
Pump Boys and Dinettes was 3 years ago. No, God, it was almost 4 years ago because it was my first show at Village.
It was the first time we ever worked together.
Yeah, it was the first time we worked together. And Pump Boys, I directed it. Jessica was the casting director. RJ Tansioka was the music director and arranger for it. And it's a show. It's a Broadway show that's not super well known, but it's done a lot. Honestly, in the Midwest, it's like a country western rock sort of like musical review, kind of with like sort of characters and sort of a story.
It was created by, it's one of those shows that was created by a certain group of humans.
By like kind of like a band, like a band. Friends that also played instruments.
And there's like a goofy, loose story around it, but it's just basically really awesome, fun music with a silly story around it.
Yeah, and the original production had a lot of the actors play instruments. There's like 6 people in the show, and I think 4 of them played instruments, or 3 or 4 of them played instruments.
You did that for those who are watching the many live happy hours. You did a whole rundown with RJ.
Oh yeah, of course, yeah. And so we really wanted, when RJ and I were approaching the show, we wanted to do our own Village Theater version of Pump Boys. And I also felt really strongly that everyone in the show needed to play an instrument, and as many as possible. And so it was both like auditioning for like vocal types and character types, but also like
what can you bring to the table music?
Like what creative things these people can bring to the table in a show that exists, but not in the form that we would eventually do it. So Jessica had this kind of impossible task of casting a show that only like half existed, and the right people, and talk about how you actually did the audition.
Well, basically it was like, here's a musical side, make it your own with whatever instrument you want to play it on. It was pretty much very loose and very much just be organic and bring us what you can. There were a couple characters that specified what type of guitar to bring in, or, LM is only piano. But it was crazy because essentially I just like did a lot of this is just a lot of research for me. It's scrolling through all of these Seattle shows. It's looking at artists it's going through headshots over and over again to see like, what are secret skills people have that I don't know they have. Every time I hear somebody's an actor musician now, I'm like, and I try to I have a little notebook that I make notes in, and I have an Excel doc of like running tab of actor musicians because of Pump Boys and Dinettes. And I was like, this is hard, but it was also just finding personalities too. So anyways, it was bring your personality, bring whatever instruments you want into the room. And that was our first round. And then the second round, callback, this was a fun round. We put groups of 7 people together and we just asked them to jam. And I think we picked like an Elvis song.
Yeah, it was like, there was like Hound Dog or something.
Hound Dog. And it was so funny because we were in this tiny dance studio in Issaquah because we couldn't we didn't have any rehearsal space.
Yeah.
And so I was like, we were in this brand new building and we were like rolling out chairs and pianos and like making a lot of noise in this very pristine ballet room that was gorgeous. And I was like, what is this? This is so great. And then it was just RJ walking around telling people like, no, you take the lead. Now you take the lead. Now you sing harmony. Now, and it was basically like, who's up for anything and who's up for who knows. And it's so fun because I specifically remember, speaking of self-tapes, Sylvie Davison.
Yeah.
Sylvie. I secretly knew that she had this like grassroots background, but she's also this like beautiful classical actress who was Emma and Book It at Book It. And like, I knew for some reason that she had this secret side to her, and her video, I think, was one of the most impressive things I've ever seen. And that just goes to show you that like, if it's in your bones, it's in your bones. And if you understand the style, I always say that if you're playing poker, style is the ace and style is the ace up your sleeve. If you understand style, you understand the show, that is your biggest ally. And Sylvie killed it.
Well, I'm trying to think of other like crazy auditions. Like for Spelling Bee, there was like an improv element.
Mm-hmm. That was so funny because we didn't give people a heads up because you can't, because it's improv. And we would just be like, we want you to go in the hall and come back in and introduce us, the panel, as spellers, which was hilarious. And I loved it.
Hilarious and really helped. It was really fascinating.
Yeah, it was really.
We also had a couple shows of some really intense, like long-term casting.
Yeah. I call them
is the one that I think of. That was the really, really long-term.
Yeah, I call them my babies because Billy Elliot, Dreamgirls, Pump Boys didn't take 9 months. Newsies took 9 months. Those are like my babies, I call them, because they took so long to cast. But a lot of that is just intense outreach in the community. Billy Elliot, P&B helped us so much. I remember going and like sitting in on ballet classes and meeting teachers and asking them what I should be looking for and talking about style and learning about this whole other world of ballet and boys and kids that I didn't have any information on before. And learning how to find those kids and then give them the tools in the audition to succeed. That Billy Elliot audition for those Billies and the Michaels, it was a 3-month audition process where none of those Billies had ever tap danced before. They had never even put on tap shoes. And so many of them we taught them a combo, and then we said, bye, see you in 2 months. And a lot of them took tap classes. Then they came back and we did Billy Camp. Brian and Marina, whose son was a Michael. They just commented. They came back and they had 1 week where we kept them 2 days. And then the next week they came back. I believe we made a cut, which was heartbreaking. Then the next week they came back and they had another 2 days of Billy Camp. And it was a long process. And then Katie Tabb trained them for 9 months in order for us to open Billy Elliot. And that was super special. Dreamgirls took 9 months to cast, and that was super special. Finding Angela Burchett was like just waiting. Our Effie was a really special process for me because it was mostly me listening, right? It's just putting out feelers and talking. This person would say, I would recommend this person. I'd reach out to them. They weren't available. They would recommend 5 other people. And so through that process,
Katie's had the credit for Billy Elliot. These 9-month processes you have so much heart put into it.
So much heart. Like Dreamgirls, I loved that cast so much. They all killed it and worked their butts off. And finding Angela Burchett was like finding a diamond. She's just so beautiful. And Lauren Dupree as Dina, that was like a no-brainer. And Alexandria,
like
that was our first
water.
That was our first main stage production of Nathaniel. And I remember Nathaniel walked into an open call for Kubamore. And I was like, who the hell are you? And Nathaniel Tannenbaum was James Thunder Early. For those of you, and he's been in String and will hopefully be in other things.
He's been Indecent at Seattle Rep recently. It was stunning. Like, he's a very, very talented guy.
But it's just every time you have these long, intense, deep processes, you become attached to the artist because they not only do they work so hard, but they breathe so much life into these characters throughout the process that you can't imagine it any other way. Like, so many people, I'm sure, think of Dreamgirls and they think of Beyonce in the movie, and my brain goes to that trio of Angela and Lauren and Alexandria because they worked so hard on it.
Yeah. So I have other questions of mine that I would love to ask you, but we have a lot of questions from folks in our comments. So I think I'm gonna actually like jump to some of that stuff. So if you're just joining us, I'm with Jessica Spencer, Village Theater's casting director. If you have questions or comments, go ahead and put them, write them down, and we will see them, and we may get to them. We're now in like the question and answer portion of the evening. So feel free to put your questions down there. Let's see. The first one that I thought was really interesting was, where did it go? It was someone asking about the most overdone songs.
Oh my gosh.
Like, what songs do you love hearing? Here it is. From Savannah Lynn. What songs do you hear over and over this past audition season? Or in general, because I think there's some songs that definitely like stick around.
Yeah. This year, every soprano sang Simple Little Things.
From?
I don't remember what it's from.
It's from 110 in the Shade.
That's right. Yeah. And I was just like, after a while I did zone out, but I think, here's the thing. If you have a good interpretation of the song and it's compelling, I love it no matter what. Because honestly, I really love that song. And there were so many people that I was like, wow, that is beautiful and heartfelt. But I think the struggle with, when everybody does something, there's always this zeitgeist all of a sudden where something becomes the thing to do. When that happens, it's just, you got to be really good at it. And for some reason, it was Simple Little Things this year, and I have no idea why.
Yeah, I definitely have on my list of, because I used to be in casting years ago and still as a director see a lot of stuff anyways. Like, I have my list of like songs that I will hear. I would listen to anyone sing these couple songs.
I'll listen to anybody sing Try Me from She Loves Me.
I was just going to say, Try Me is one of them. It's like, yes.
Try Me is my favorite. I love it.
Sing Try Me. Or the song She Loves Me. I love the song.
Yeah, just so great.
If I Loved You, I will kind of almost always like to hear If I Loved You just because I love that song.
But not Vanilla Ice Cream.
Not Vanilla Ice Cream, because if you can't sing that high C, I don't want to.
Also, it's not just about the high C. Everybody thinks it's about the high C, but I'm like, there's so much more before the high C that I want to see be interesting.
I'm fine. Like, I'm fine with.
Yeah.
We're gonna get into.
Brandon and I will happily argue over little nitpicky things like this.
Here's a good general question. What's some advice you would give to someone who wants to be hired as an actor? What makes a good or bad audition? Give like your number one or two things. Thanks, Shay, for the question. Preparation.
Be prepared. Here's my rule of thumb: is if you are bringing me material, if I'm not giving, this is not talking about callback stuff, also be prepared there. But if you're bringing me material, I'm expecting that you're showing me what is possible, what your full potential is. I always say, like, make your general audition your opening night. If not opening night, maybe even 2 weeks into the run, because that's what I want to see. I want to see what you can do fully teched, fully staged, fully comfortable, fully relaxed. That's what I want to see. So I really think preparation in an audition, feeling comfortable and confident, that's the key. And feeling good about what you do and what you like to do. That's the most important thing when you're bringing me material. Mm-hmm.
And what's the worst the worst thing for someone to do in an audition, other than not be prepared?
Not be prepared. I think being robotic and overly apologetic. They're two separate things, but I think we're looking for people that we want to work with. Brandon and I work together. We're friends. We're looking for people to come in and share space with us. And so we're looking for real people, and we're looking for personalities, and we want to get to know that part of you. So don't be afraid of showing us that.
Mm-hmm.
But also you don't have to apologize if you're having a bad day. You can thank us for being there and joining you in that moment. But I think people forget how much we really want them to succeed and how much we really care about them. And here's the thing, it's like one bad year does not beget the rest of your career. It's okay. One bad day is not forever. It's just for that day.
Yeah, and I think it's so easy for people to, in Seattle especially, there's so few audition opportunities, just because it works differently than like New York City, where New York you could go on 6 auditions a week.
Oh, yeah.
6 auditions in one day.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas in Seattle, you'd have 6 auditions over 6 months or 3 months.
The pressures and the stakes definitely.
Yeah, and so it's really easy. Like I totally agree when it'll happen so often when someone will like introduce someone and they'll walk in the room and they'll like walk straight to the piano player and I'll say like, hey, how are you today? And they like don't even listen because they are so like hyper focused and unable to like have an experience and like a human connection. And like that robot thing then oftentimes continues into that audition where they get into like hyper focus mode and can't like show who they are as people.
Yeah. Yeah, we just want to be friends with you.
We really do. I get a lot of crap because there's certain actors that I really like working with, and many of them are friends. But the thing that I think sometimes people don't realize is they most of the time didn't start as friends. They started as people that I just thought were really talented and wanted to get to know and wanted to work with. And then I worked with them and loved them and became friends. And that's what can come of like just showing your personality to people. And you want to be in the room with people that are talented, but also people that are like kind and giving. And
oh my gosh, I don't know if this is appropriate or if she'll hate me, but I think a great story is like, and I even reminded her of the story earlier this year, and I don't know if she'll hate me, but like nobody knew who Erica Matoba was before she walked into that audition room for Into the Woods. And my favorite thing that she told me is she was like, good thing I went to that general. And I was like, oh, I knew you before that general because you took a class with Eric Ankrum that he asked me to audit. And I literally wrote down your name from the class I audited. Erica Matoba, Little Red Riding Hood, Into the Woods. And she was like, it was all based on that general audition. And I was like, oh no, you were on the list before that. And she's like, what? I had no idea. And it's just like, it's a good reminder that like, the reason I hop around places and I try to see as much as I can and see as much as I do is so that I can see you when you're working. It's when you're working and you're not trying to show me the facade, right? That's when I really like to see people. And now, just another example. Now you and Erica are good friends. She's such a wonderful. I love Erica Matoba too.
I know we all love Erica Matoba. Here's another question from Caden Oliver. What are your thoughts on as a casting director about people asking to be seen for shows? Does it necessarily help you as a casting director? So what Caden's asking about is if you're not invited to a callback, but you know that they're happening or want to be seen for a particular show, is it appropriate to call a casting director or email them and say, hey, I'd like to come in for this thing? What say you, Jessica?
What say me? I used to say you get one, right? Like that used to be my thing. It's like you get one, but I don't agree with myself anymore. I think there are a couple things. If I've never met you before, please include a link to your work so that I can review you. You know what I mean? So that I can review. Because the idea is that this shouldn't be the first time that I'm seeing you. I should have something to credit by your name so that I know that I'm bringing in some quality to these directors, because I also have a job to do. The other thing is, I think you are welcome. And I think if I say no and I give a specific reason, I think it's something to listen to and take heart in. And to know that it's really hard for me to write down, not this time, here are some things that we're looking for this project. And right now I don't see you fitting as that character type or this type. Those things are really hard for me as a human to write down on the paper. So no, or on the email. So know that like they're definitely felt with intent and intention. They're written in that way. So just know that then if you feel like you still need to push back, provide more material about yourself. Provide a link to a self-tape where you're showing me what you don't think I know about you, right? But I think you need to be careful not to be the person who calls yourself in for every show. Know your skills, know what you're really good at, know what your sense of style is, so that when you walk into that room, right, like I do make notes on audition sheets requested to be seen, right? I think, Brandon, you've probably seen those before, where I note that like, I'm not sure what this, like this is somebody who really wants to be here. Let's see why. So just make sure that you're not the person to request every show. You got to know why you think you should be there, and then you got to deliver.
And I will say, I know plenty of times when people were not called, requested to be called, and booked it.
Yeah,
so it's not to say that it's never possible.
And
I think for Jessica's sanity, Jessica's sanity alone, you can't be that person to call every single time and say, I need to be seen for this show. I need to be seen for that show.
But also, I will say, like, there have been a couple times where somebody like, hey, I really think I'm right for this. Can I be seen? And I'm like, oh my God, what an idiot. How did I forget that person? Mm-hmm. So like that happens. I'm human and I love being told like, you forgot me. And then I'm like, you're right. I messed that one up. Thank you, friend. So that's why I say like, that's why I've dropped my, like, you only get one thing, is because I'm like, oh man, I'm not perfect at all. I like to know what you want to be seen for. That's helpful.
If you're just joining us, this is Jessica Spencer, the casting director at Village Theater. And we're doing like a little Q&A now. We've chatted through a bunch of Jessica's career and her work at Village. And so now if you have any questions or comments or want to ask anything, please write them in the comments field. Here's another one from Iris Elton, who's an actor that many have seen on our stage. That's particularly relevant to this moment in time. What's your favorite and least favorite thing about video submissions? Which a month ago may have been something different than right
totally. I like it in video submissions when I can, like, when somebody's silly and clever and creative, but it still fits within the style of the show, right? Like if somebody does something fresh and original that sticks in my mind, that's great. Like, I like that. I get to see your personality. We haven't done Hollow Dolly's not a drama, but you know what I mean? Like right now we've been just focusing on Mamma Mia, which is literally a party in Greece. So why not be silly and have fun and show your personality? The people who really get that stand out. They stand out. My least favorite thing is not being able to offer adjustments in the moment, right? Because so often somebody does what they think is the strongest thing for that moment, but I know that they can give me exactly what the director wants. And I have no way except asking them for a retape to ask them to do that. So it's just, again, mourning our quarantine situation and not being able to make live adjustments. I think that's my least favorite thing.
Mm-hmm. Here's an interesting topic that we, kind of have on our minds often. Can you talk a little bit about Village's view on colorblind casting? There's a second part to this, also gender blind, things like that. Mm-hmm. I definitely, just to point out like some vocabulary things, the way that we talk about it at Village, and Stephanie, I think this is what you're getting towards. We call it color conscious casting as opposed to colorblind casting, because I'm of the opinion that the idea of being blind to color is actually not a good thing. I think we want to be aware of that. because if we completely ignore it, we could like insinuate some things that are not something that we want to insinuate, or we could be making a statement where we don't want to make a statement, or putting actors in particularly uncomfortable situations when if we would have thought more about how this person in this role means something different than another person in that role. And that goes for color, for gender, for anything like that. We want to make sure that we are staying true to the intent of the show. But Jess, do you have anything to add to that? But then also want to talk about how we go about that?
Yeah, we as an artistic staff, which at Village Theater is Brandon, myself, Tim, and Jerry, we talk about this a lot. We have
Tim Simons, our resident music director, and Jerry is Jerry Dixon, our artistic director.
Yeah, we talk about this a lot. When we choose the shows for the season, we talk about how color conscious casting can be incorporated across all elements. And we, it spans so many parts, right? It's on stage, it's backstage, it's in the pit. We have a lot of goals and a lot of things we keep in mind. For actors specifically, I think that's also a big reason why we choose to have such large calls, is we are very open and we are looking for the actors to show us what they bring to many of the roles that we feel are appropriate for color conscious casting. So I think we're constantly searching to be better and seeking to be better. But it's definitely one of our higher priorities. And every year I think we get closer to being better, and then we learn more lessons, and then we continue to be better.
Yeah, I think so much of it is wanting to see the world that we exist in actually exist on stage. One of the things that people don't really want to talk about a lot is that, musical theater is pretty white. It's pretty white. It's like it's a white institution, basically, but that's not what our world looks like. So trying to figure out how to fold in as much of our community as possible is really important to Village. And that's something that Steve Tompkins, our former artistic director, I've been seeing shows at Village since I was like 15 or 16, and he instilled that in, I think, his audiences from a very early point. Like Lisa Estridge in Joseph was the narrator in Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat, and she was in Bells Are Ringing opposite Timothy Piguet, and Timothy and Lisa also were in Peter Pan together, and Jen Paz Timothy was Don Quixote and Man of La Mancha, and Jen Paz was Belle in Beauty and the Beast. It's something that has kind of been in Village's bones, and some years we do great with it and some years we do less great, but we're always aware of it and trying to do better.
I think that's also a good reason for, we've done masterclass series in the past. And that's one of my favorite things is I get more opportunity to watch people work and to see how they work. And I'm not relying on the audition room. And I'm also learning new things about people. And so oftentimes, like I say, style is the ace, right? But oftentimes I don't get to learn all the styles an actor can do. And that's how people get pigeonholed. And I think that happens a lot for actors. They'll only get called in for specific shows where their story is on stage, and we're trying to move past that and provide opportunities to watch you work more so we can understand all the opportunities and all of your potential. That's one of the things I have my eyes on a lot, is just what else can they do? What else can we push our audience to see them doing on our stage? How can we represent
yeah, and also, like, I always say context is key. And so, like, if there is some kind of racial context to a show, like, of course we're not going to do ragtime and color blindly cast, because that's not what the show is. Like, there is race baked into that is what ragtime is about, right? So it depends on if you're talking about a show that has existed for a long time versus a new musical versus something that is very specifically racially based in its or gender-based, or it's, it is a million different things go into those.
New musicals are great because we can always look at the writers and say, well, what if? And, it's their show, so they get to make it what they feel. But I think that's part of my enjoyment on working on new musicals is when we get to like be like, hey, I had a crazy idea. Can we try this? I've asked for that. We auditioned a new musical. I won't go into all the details. I'll be so vague. This is the part of my job that I hate, where it's like, you can be specific, but not at all. But it was a show you directed, Brandon, and it was a new work.
Oh, God. So you're whittling it down now, Jess.
I was like, hey, would you be willing to see women for that role? And you were, and the writers were up for it, and we played with that. And just to have that openness and that flexibility was so delightful for me. So it's like there's potential there, and what I appreciate is when directors and writers want to play.
Yeah, totally.
So that's
here's another question from another Village Theater actor, Jayla Harper. What are your thoughts on people asking for feedback on an audition, and what and when is the proper way to go about that? Or someone has an audition for you and then wants to get feedback on how they did and what they can do to get better.
Here's what I'll say is oftentimes I can't get around to those emails right after a callback because I'm following up with so many people just to let them know the status. Because if you can imagine, if we have 100 people auditioning for something, that's 100 people I have to follow up with. But I feel like it's appropriate to ask, again, not every time, right? Not every time. That's always my rule, is like, not every time. But it's appropriate to ask, and it's appropriate, especially if you feel like, hey, I thought everything was clicking. I thought I did great. What is the reason? And also asking for productive feedback. What can I do? And then also knowing and being okay with the idea that sometimes there's nothing else you could have done. The director just preferred someone else who was very similar to you or 100% different than you. It's just sometimes there's nothing to be done, and knowing that that might be the answer and being okay with hearing that.
So there's a couple other questions that I want to get to, but one of the questions that Jessica actually had that I think is a super interesting question for you that you want to ask the audience.
Oh yeah,
I think is cool. So you'll all have to type in your answers, and we'll talk about it a little bit.
I just want to know, for those of you, and it's hard because I know there are a lot of actors on this feed, so don't just say the shows you were in. But what has been some of your favorite ensembles that you've seen at Village Theater, and like your favorite casts, or your favorite like out of the box casting decision that you're like, I wouldn't have thought about that. That was awesome. I just want to hear those things because I never get to.
Yeah, so if you watching have like an ensemble, like a specific like ensemble, like the ensemble of Hairspray or something, or an ensemble cast, which would be like a She Loves Me or a Spelling Bee or something like that, or like an out of the box casting thing, where you like didn't expect that person to play that role or whatever, and also like
the sisters from String.
What?
The three sisters from String.
Oh, you're all asking it so quickly, answering so fast. I love this. The three sisters from String. That was Jessica Scarrett, Lauren Dupree, and Sarah Porklob.
I love it when festival casting carries over. That's one of my favorite like pride moments, is when we just think of something awesome and the writers are like, yeah, let's do that forever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh my gosh, everyone is commenting. Let's see, what's the first one? The first one that someone said was Newsies. There's a lot of people that have said Newsies. Look at all these Newsies people. Newsies. There's a lot of people that have said Howard Barnes, which we're very proud of. That ensemble in Howard Barnes was pretty special.
They were so sweet. I loved it.
Yeah, they're a good crew. Oh God, no, it's where'd it go?
A few shout outs, yeah. A lot.
Here's Dreamgirls. I mean, so good. Dreamgirls was so good. The She Loves Me ensemble. Les Mis was also incredible. She Loves Me, right? She Loves Me was like pretty close to perfect.
It was basically perfect. I agree. It was so delightful.
So good.
Being in the room with those humans was the best. I love them.
Oh my gosh, everyone. Oh, here's one. Rebecca says Jesus Christ Superstar in 2011.
Oh my gosh, I love that.
So this was before Jessica's time, but this Jesus Christ Superstar was really interesting. Brian Yorkie directed it and did like a modern, it's one of the few sort of like true concept productions that Village has done, but he did like a modern version that like almost like it existed in the uprising in Egypt in like 2009 or 10, whenever that was. But we had Michael K. Lee and Aaron Finley were our Jesus and our Judas, and they switched off every single show. So one show you would watch Michael K. Lee and Aaron Finley. Michael would play Judas and Aaron would play Jesus, and then the next show Aaron would play Judas and Michael would play Jesus. It was totally crazy.
There are like a couple shows. What I love. Oh, this is a fun, silly story, right? So because I moved here, I didn't grow up here. So Brandon, you grew up here. Tim Simons grew up here, who now I know is watching this because he commented. Haha. But so many times in our office, I will like hear Village Theater lore, right? Like the great stories of the history of Village Theater. And I just like, I learned very quickly to start tracking those things and like track those names. And my favorite thing was when we were casting Hairspray, right? We were talking about Corny Collins. And I was like, Steve really wanted to work with somebody. That was his last show at Village. And he was very passionate that he wanted to work with somebody he had worked with before. And it was just a lot of availability was really hard. People were busy and we were trying to think. And I was being creative. And I literally was like, you know what name I've heard a lot of, but I've never met? Jason Kappas. Let's go do some YouTube stalking. Who is Jason Kappas? And he was like, I like that idea. Give him a call. And so you got to listen to that Village Theater lore because it pays off big time.
Yeah, it's real. There's a Showboat was really beautiful.
It's one I've heard a lot about too. Matilda was so good.
Man of La Mancha was like really one of my favorite productions of Village ever. There's a couple of you that have said Matilda, which we totally agree with. $1 Million Quartet, that cast was bonkers.
Yeah. I mean, and I think that's another one of like listening, right? The first MDQ, all I heard was like crazy stories about Levi, right? Crazy stories about Levi
Christ, who played Jerry Lee Lewis and then won a Tony Award for that performance when the show moved to Broadway. And
we were looking at Pump Boys. It was another time that I was like, why don't we just ask Levi if he wants to come back? And everybody was like, no. Doesn't hurt to ask. He killed it. But it was another one of those like listening and like knowing. And I think that's important even now within the community of like, I hear when actors are giving stellar performances and I track those things. And so often I don't even, if I can't see them, I know like it's exciting.
Ooh, here's one from the vaults. What?
Tim Simon.
What? Of course, Tim. What was a developmental production that we did?
Oh my gosh.
That was about what is the guy's name? James Watt?
I don't know. Karen Lund just texted me and was like, Lonnie and Jason Kappas moved to Seattle to do Taproot's Road Company initially.
Oh, back in the day. Oh, that's right.
Yeah. So it's just like Taproot and Village. We are intertwined deeply.
The Chicago Ensemble, says Arthur, which I also agree with. Amazing.
That was
good. What else? Have we talked about Spelling Bee yet? I can't remember.
That was magical too.
That cast was so
fun. I love that. Hearing these things from everybody just like makes my day so bright because it's so good because they're all so good. They're so good.
Yeah. So here's now, where did that other question go? That I thought we would like talk about these later.
Close.
Everyone started commenting immediately. Where did it go?
Does everybody else have their wine too? Are we missing with our wine?
Right. We'll get back to this. This is so keep commenting if you have favorite casting that at Village. Keep putting it, and we'll get to them later. But this is one that came earlier. Tyler, who would play each of you in a new work about Village Theater staff? So Jess, you cast me, and I'll cast you.
Oh, no. Oh, like, are we talking Seattle actors or like
the world? Seattle actors or the world, I guess. I immediately went to Seattle actors personally.
Tim Simons would play you because he does a really good impersonation.
Who would?
Tim Simons.
I haven't even seen his impression of me. I just know that I sometimes look at photos of Tim and think it's me.
You know, Michelle's on the line. You know who I actually want? Oh, okay. Oh,
well, so I think locally, Brenna Wagner
I love
would make a really great Jessica Spencer. I also think that Hannah Sherman would make a really great Jessica Spencer.
Hilarious. Well, I mean, I'll take these as credit because these are hilarious, awesome, funny women. I think, you know who I want to see play you, and I think it's just because like he is so good at capturing like nuance, and he's just very intense and focused. I want to see Eric Ankrum play you.
Oh, God.
You know what I mean? Like, and Michelle's watching this, so she can be like, Eric, get over here. But I think he would love that project. He would love it.
That's funny. I would be honored to have Seattle star Eric Ankrum play me.
And plus, you guys could then he could grow out his facial hair. He loves.
Yeah, he loves that.
He loves that.
If anyone, this is the longest one we've ever gone, and like everything is still there's tons of people watching. There's comments. Like, if you have more.
The other question I had, which was whose headshot is more updated.
Okay, let me see.
Ivy as Brandon. I also think that's great casting. How about your twin, Brandon?
Oh my gosh, I'm a twin. This is the wrong. That's funny because I have a twin brother, and I don't know if he would. Well, I don't know. The older he gets, I think the more he would be totally down to be in a musical or something.
That'd be so funny. This is also like, I don't know what this musical is about. Tim Simons is the character I'm already taken. Yeah, that'd be pretty good too. Who doesn't want to play Tim Simons though?
I want to play Tim Simons.
Exactly. That's the way I think that what it should be truly is that like Tim and Brandon play.
Oh, I see.
Do you know what I mean? Because
would Caitlin, the production manager, our associate production manager, play you?
This is the other thing is that like I don't think Caitlin, Jesse, who's our company manager, or Caitlin, I don't think Jessica, I don't think any of the three girls want up on that stage to represent each other. But you two boys can totally switch places and play each other, hands down. That'd be so good. I'll play. I think I'll play Jay Markham.
You do a good Jay. So I'm going to ask Jessica's next question, which is also very silly. But if any of you have other questions, even if it's about getting back to the topic at hand of like casting questions for Jessica, or just comment and talk more about your favorite casting in Village Theater history, that's cool too. If you're new, this is Jessica. She's our casting director at Village Theater. Our next silly question for you is. I have to get this pulled up correctly. Whose headshot is older in this video? Who thinks Jessica's headshot is older, and who thinks my headshot is older? Because both of them are woefully out of date.
I think this is what you call living in the past. I think when we. So anyways, this is when the point of the evening has hit the rock bottom.
Yeah, I would say this is when I'm like a little tipsy, but it's all water.
I've had 3 sips of this. It's great.
I'm taking
the toddler around, so it's great. I could now read this book. Little Bear counts his favorite things.
No one's voted. Who thinks who's
Brandon's is older? Okay, Brandon's. Dane Sukinger has.
Yeah, no one's answering the question.
Oh my gosh.
Whose headshot is older in this photo? Which one?
I think you. That's so bad.
Well, the answer is mine is from I literally got it for like
when you got the job
position. So I got it like 4 years ago.
Yeah.
three and a half years ago?
Yeah, mine's definitely older. Mine's like 6 years old.
I have this beard now, and so that's what, and you can see all this white hair, so that's probably what people are. No, Tim, you're wrong. Everyone's wrong.
Yeah, mine's definitely older.
Maybe I've just probably aged more or something.
This was not the response I expected. So I just have to let you know that I'm shocked. I'm also shocked that my mother has not commented on anything, but that's fine, Mom. That's fine. Whatever.
We'll have a conversation about that later.
Okay, we should talk about theater.
I guess everyone seems to be pretty down for us to just like talk about all of this stuff. New comments.
I don't
know. We had some other questions that were asked beforehand that people didn't necessarily ask on this on the stream. In a decision between two people in casting, what aspect usually wins the role, or is there one?
I think style and experience. Yeah. I think
experience.
Yeah. What do you think?
I think to be totally blunt, like if there is any kind of like I had a bad experience with this person.
Oh, you went there.
That I'm just gonna say it. Like if someone was difficult or if someone had
I think typically, just to be honest, those like if it's between two people, I usually find that that's not the case with the two people. This is Taylor. How exciting! New Parks and Rec episode tomorrow. Sorry, that's good.
We'll get to that question later. Yeah, I mean, I would totally agree that generally, when you're down to like the final two, you've already weeded out.
Yeah.
Anyone that is like has like any kind of complicated working relationship with people. But that's definitely for me. There's been a couple times where I'm like, some of it's like, who do I want in the room? More.
Yeah, that happens a lot.
Really like talent and style and all of that is equal. It's like who do I want? Who will like be a good family member?
Yeah, and I also
think that the person that's not is like a bad family member, but just like they would make a better family with this other version of the show.
Yeah. If it's an out-of-town director, I feel like a lot of times, so like I'm using somebody who doesn't necessarily know deep history of the community, or it's their first time seeing everybody in the room. I think it often goes to style and the experience that, especially directors who are coming in from out of town, they want to know that they can trust the work and that that person has a good track record, which also is another reason why I call you in a million times, is because that's part of your track record is consistency across auditioning through years and years.
And there's definitely been times when I've seen someone come in multiple times and have like never worked with them before, and then get down to like the final two, and one of them is like they're both like totally equal, and one of them is someone I know really well, and one of them is someone that I don't know really well, but I'm so happy and excited that they're ready. That give it to them. Yes, I want to see this new person thrive.
Yeah, that happens too. Yeah, that's a really hard question because I feel like every time it's different.
Yeah, it's different every time you do it.
Mm-hmm.
How do you like to connect and communicate with prospective actors in our region?
Yeah, Aaron Alonso asked that question. I think that's a really hard and interesting question. How do I like to read it again? Connect.
I actually thought, until I finished reading it, I thought it was about something else. How do you like to connect and communicate with prospective actors in our region? I mean, I think answer it however you like, because we can't ask Aaron what he means.
Right. I mean, I think anytime a school or a university or a college asks me to come in and talk, I say yes, if I can do it in my schedule. And that is probably one of my favorite ways to connect and connect with community members and future artists. And I also think it's also why I like teaching. And it's also why when we can host master classes, I like to do that type of forum, because I like to get to know the humans, and I like to do things like this where I can just answer any and all questions. So I think that that's my favorite way to connect with actors. is in a open forum or educational setting. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. What skills? This is interesting. This is from an actor, how do you say Cy's last name? Palatino?
I think so.
Oh, I got it. Yes.
Palantonio.
Palantonio.
Yeah.
There's more letters there.
I think so.
What skills from your acting career are applicable to your career as a casting director?
Oh man, here I always tell actors to diversify, like, because I think I use the umbrella analogy a lot. Like, if you have the umbrella of theater over you, knowing any and everything is so important, right? So all of my skills that I had as an actor, especially as a singer, I can just it's so helpful to like watch somebody sing and know what their body is doing and know like pedagogy, right? Like the pedagogy that I learned to help me sing is helpful when I watch auditions. The pedagogy I learned to translate a scene and dissect a scene as an actor, that's a great tool that I use consistently. Anything, same. Most of us get into theater as actors as kids, right? Because that's like what you do. It's the physical thing you can do. And, Brandon, you started as an actor too, and now you're a director, and all of those things, anything you learn about theater is translated. You have to understand the full umbrella to know what the skills needed are.
Yeah, absolutely. Here's a new question. Again, if any of you have questions, go ahead and ask them in the comments, and we'll get to them when we can. Jeremy would like to know, do you hire actors that mostly have community theater on their resume?
Yeah, I think I never expect anybody to have more on their resume than they should. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm willing to I need to rephrase this. What the work you do in the room is the most important, right? And there's a reason why there are different roles to offer, right? Not everybody is going to hop right into a principal role. That happens often, but sometimes it's the ensemble that I need to fill out, and that's where I have the most opportunity. And opportunity is for everyone, and I think it's really important to know that, like, I think community theater is you practicing your skills. Village theater is you practicing your skills. Anytime you do this, it's you practicing your skills. And I'm a big believer that we don't know where the best theater in the world happening tonight is happening, right? Well, especially tonight. Like, it could be, I'm always saying it could be in a community theater up in Alaska where there are 3 people in the audience. Like, we don't know where the best storytelling moments on the face of this planet are happening at any given time. So I think it's really important to not discount or say that anything is more or less than. I think, when I say that people are looking for experience, that includes any experience. Just practice your craft. People often ask me, like, what should I put on my resume? And I'm a big proponent of, if you just graduated college or you decided not to go to college, I don't expect you to have anything on your resume more than what you have. You don't have to make up anything. You don't have to stretch anything to look like work. But hey, if you did Juliet in college, then I know it doesn't matter that it was in college or community theater. I know that you took the time to learn that text, to memorize it, to dissect it. I know what kind of conversations you've had. That's great. That's a skill. I can look at your resume no matter where you did that and know that that's a thing you've done. So,
and it's not like people just immediately start working at the professional level. Like, that's absolutely not how it works.
That's the 1%, right? Like,
yeah.
That's
one of my favorite things when I was a casting director and even now, and Jessica, you and I go to shows all the time together. And like, honestly, most of them are like community theater shows. Like, I go and see stuff at Seattle Musical Theater and Tacoma Musical Playhouse and yeah, like Renton Civic, like places all the time, because sometimes that's where I first came across Taylor Niemeyer at Tacoma Musical Playhouse when she was like a literal child, and saw her in Hairspray. I think she was Penny in Hairspray at Tacoma Musical Playhouse. And then when I did the Jazz as Chaperone at Seattle Musical Theater, like that next year, I remembered her and like brought her in for that. But like everybody we all come from the same place at the beginning of the day. So like,
yeah, and I've been thinking about this a lot, especially with the current state of the world right now, and especially the current state of the arts community. It's really, we all need each other. Like, we all need each other. We need community theater to provide opportunity. We need village theater just as much as we need the community theater. We need, Tacoma's doing crazy, amazing things down there. We need Tacoma. We need Everett. We need each other to all coexist and support all the artists that live here. We can't, it's not just up to Fifth Avenue, Seattle Rep, Village, Act. It's not just those theaters that create this community.
Yeah. And I know like Village Theater stars that were in like the Microsoft Theater Troupe.
Yeah.
It doesn't really matter as long as you come into the room and do good work, or like when Jess goes to see you in something and she goes, that person, wow, that's incredible.
All the educational road companies that exist in this city are amazing. Book It, Fifth Ave, Taproot, all of those educational opportunities for actors, that teaches some serious discipline, right? And if you're doing a village theater run, it's like 16 weeks. I see that you've done a children's tour of any kind, and I'm like, they have patience. That's good. So I think that all those things are so important, and they all create our company. Yeah, I know, right?
Sanchez is the Microsoft Theater Troupe person that I was talking about.
Who also sang an excellent song on our stage about public defecation.
He also made this is a question from Nick DeSantis. Who, in your opinion, sang the best song about public defecation on the Village's iconic stage?
I think it'd be Mr. DeSantis, who is probably also one of the most generous humans in this city, although he doesn't want you to know it.
Who loves Nick DeSantis? Comment below if you like Nick DeSantis. Tell us how much you like him. And if you don't, we want to know that too. Here's a real question from Dana Goldenberg. What would you tell people who have taken a hiatus and want to get back into performance? She's, of course, asking for a friend. I would say audition, Dana.
She's going to, don't worry. Life is life. Life is more important. Life is real, right? Like, this is what we do. We actually do life. I think right now in this moment is a great example. We do life. We're all taking a hiatus right now. Let's be real. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Some people have to take hiatuses because their parents got sick. Some people have to take care of each other. Some people have kids and they take a hiatus. It's really, I think it's great. I think be honest, be open, be excited. And that's the thing, is so often we are ready. We're excited to see you back. So we're happy you're back.
Yeah, I would just say get out there and just do it when you're ready. Like, and no one's rushing anybody to do anything. Like, we all feel pressure in our lives, but like when it's time for you to do it and you feel comfortable with it, then go for it. Then that's your time. Mm-hmm. But I don't know. This is all a family, and I think everyone's really happy when they see someone return and come back, whether that be a career change or whatever, or moving away and then coming back. Like,
I think that's why it is so important for companies, this is me just talk about job security, but to have the longevity with artistic staff to, really get to know the artistic community. That's why I'm here, right? It's my job to be like, hey, this person's back, or should we poke that person to see if they want to come back? It's having that longevity. That's why I always say, like, I listen so much, is because I didn't know who Jason Kappas was. I didn't know who Levi Christ was. But like, those gaps they're normal, and I don't think they're anything to fret about.
Yeah. One of my favorite, when I used to be the casting director at the Fifth Avenue, one of my favorite moments was having a general audition, and this older man that I'd never seen before walked in, and it was like odd. He was being a little he was a little uncomfortable. I was like, hey, how you feeling? You good? And he was like, oh, it's been a long time since I've auditioned. I was like, oh, why is that? He's like, oh, I moved to Hawaii and became a teacher for the last 20 years or something. I was like, oh, okay. And he's like, sorry, I've just got this book. And it was like a Godspell vocal selections that he got from the library or something. He's like, this is all I have. I'm like, that's great. And he started, and I actually didn't look at his resume, and he started singing, and it's like he's probably in his early 60s. And he started singing, and for some reason I hadn't looked at his resume, and he started singing, and I was like, oh my gosh, what is this? This is incredible. And I looked down at his resume, and he was like in the original Broadway companies of like Dreamgirls and Pearly, and he had like 5 like original Broadway runs.
No big deal.
Resume. And he had like taken 30 years off to be a teacher for a while. That's great. That's amazing. And I actually think he came and auditioned, and then we kept trying to call him in for things. He's like, you know what? I actually think I'm good, but it was really great to see you in audition, and that was really lovely to sing that song.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yes, Dana, it is not linear, this comment that you made. Definitely it is not linear. No.
Can we go back really fast? And I just want to also ask everybody who's still listening, I don't know if they are, who else is excited about the Parks and Rec?
Oh my God.
episode tomorrow? Because I think it's the best thing to have happened.
Now we're not talking about theater at all. We're just talking about
quarantine. I literally found out it was happening because Tim Simons texted me and I cried.
For those that don't know, Parks and Rec was a TV show that Amy Poehler and a bunch of other amazing people were on. And they're doing a reunion, a scripted reunion episode tomorrow night via quarantine.
Leslie Knope is my spirit animal. I dream and aspire to be her. Yeah. If Brandon Ivy was a Parks and Rec character, who would he be? Because I think I know, but I want to see if y'all think the same thing.
Oh Lord, I don't know how to. I don't know what I think about this.
This is when Tim has to reply if he's still. I think my husband's now watching, so he should reply. But anyways,
is this a like you have to pick one, or is it like a this person with that rising?
I mean, if they want to do that, they totally can. I'm interested.
I mean, you're Leslie Knope to a T. Like, there's.
Listen. I think that's a big goal, and that's what I strive. I strive to get there, but I don't know if I'm there yet. But thank you. This is Taylor. Tom. Taylor is correct. You are Tom Haverford.
Taylor is Tom.
And if you don't know who Tom Haverford is, just like look for some memes of John Ralphio. That's pretty good too. But listen, I don't think Brandon's truly deeply crazy enough to be John Ralphio. I think he has a very Ashley Kuhn, you know where
everyone thinks I'm Tom, apparently.
You're Tom. You've got like these big old dreams and you're going to go for it. And
I'll take that.
I can produce anything. I'm going to make it happen. And that's what makes you so good.
It's the drama club parties. Let's get real.
Party. I remember, when we figured out that name, that was a fun day too. Don't y'all want to come work at the Village Theater Artistic Production Office with us? We're so fun.
Right. It's a good time. I think this has devolved.
I think so too. I think we gotta call it. This is bad.
I think it's time to go. Thank you all so much for your time. This has been a blast. We've been going for over an hour and a half, which is
I'm just like, no toddler wine party.
It's also just like good to see you and like
I know.
Continue our, we walked around for like a half an hour earlier today.
I know.
It's good to just like see you. And it's so great to hear from all of you.
I love it. That's honestly the only reason I'm so excited is because
it's been really fun to hear your questions were all great, but then like your comments about shows you've liked in the past. And this has been a very active and fun happy hour. So thank you all so much for coming. Give us like and tell people and write in the comments if there's other guests or people that you would like to see. Like, that's something we've actually never done.
Don't y'all think that Brandon should do an hour with Tim Simons, our resident music director, at the piano with Taylor Niemeyer?
I think so.
Don't you think? Can't we get some peer pressure in that direction?
I feel like that would be great.
Yeah.
I would enjoy that.
Then they can do like the greatest hits of Village Theater karaoke style, but with Tim playing.
Right. So write in the comments if you would like to see Tim and Taylor do a happy hour. Or if you have other people that you would like to join. Oh my gosh, Steve Tompkins.
Can I tell one more story? Oh no, I shouldn't.
Oh, you shouldn't? Is it a bad?
One of my favorite, I don't know, he's gonna hate me.
He won't watch this.
Okay, one of my favorite Steve Tompkins stories is when we were auditioning Dreamgirls, and I got a FaceTime call from him, and he had FaceTime pocket dialed me, and he was in his car belting Dreamgirls at the top of his lungs. Nobody loves musical theater more than that man. It was so good. Because you're my dream girls. I love Steve Tompkins. He will have my heart forever.
Go ahead, write your comments. Tell us who you want to see on the happy hour. It could be a Village Theater staff member. It could be a local artist. It could be a writer that we've had. It could be anybody. Let us know. Tell us what you think. Thank you all so much for joining us. This was a
We love you and we miss you.
We miss all of you. I can't wait until we're all back in the theater, watching a show, hanging out afterwards. It's going to be great. Thank you, Jessica, for spending the night with us.
Thanks, Randy, for watching the kid.
Thanks, Randy, for watching the kids. And we will see you all next week. Bye, everyone.